Hi, I'm Robert, and you're listening to the DigiDAD podcast. In this series, young men from Northeast Young Dads and Lads will be exploring their journeys through fatherhood and interviewing other dads about their experiences. No one story is the same, so sit back, get comfy, and enjoy these stories from our DigiDAD community.
We've got two of our young dads interviewing Paul Irwin of Try Life. Paul is he's kind of created the Try Life film interactive series, which is a great resource, and we really recommend you checking that out. He also was a young dad and has worked with young dads across the globe, really, in youth work and in all sorts of capacities. So we're really lucky to have Paul here to do a bit of an interview. Paul, I guess just to start us off, my first question to you is, how did you feel when you first found out that you were going to be a young dad?
It was a while ago that, but I was 17 at the time. I was 17 when he was born. It was quite a turbulent time, I think, in my life, because I'd sort of been in care. Well, not really care. I was in bed and breakfast down Whitley Bay. Do you know what I mean? With a load of adults. And at 16, I was given the keys to my own flat in Howden. And we didn't really have any support around where, in terms of social services or anything like that. I saw a social worker once when I was in the bed and breakfast. But I was right down by the main strip of Whitley Bay back in the day when all the pubs and clubs were there. And they were all adults with really, when I look back on it, to me, they were my mates, but they weren't really my mates, were they? You know what I mean? They were 30, 40-year-old people that with some pretty serious issues, and that's what I was sort of thrown in the mix with. And the last I've got two kids too. I was 17 and then 20. 17 when my son was born, 20 when my daughter was born. We're not together now, but we're still really good mates. But we're just we're going out with each other in high school, and it was just a massive shock. I think it was just a big wake up call. But it was a difficult time.
How did you deal with stigma from obviously judgment and people that sort of thing? How did you deal with that back, obviously, when your kids were on the way?
Yeah, so when I look back at the moments that I remember that I felt uncomfortable, well, when Shane was at nursery, and I was definitely the youngest person in the playground. Do you know what I mean? By some distance, and so I guess what happened was I had a difficult teenage years. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I was in trouble quite a lot, and I wasn't happy with myself. Do you know what I mean? And then I ended up in bed and breakfast down Whitley Bay, and then came out of there, got given the keys to my flat, and then found out I was going to be a dad. And I just wanted to do the best for my son. I just wanted to make sure that I could provide for him, and I could do absolutely everything I could for him. And then, obviously, being a young parent, well, you know yourself, lads, what it's like. It's the amount of people that look down on you, the amount of looks at you. Well, I remember the amount of looks I got when I was out shopping for baby grows or anything like that. Just all of them kind of things, them societal kind of pressures. But as a young chava, because that's what I was, I would just look at people and be what the fuck they're looking at. Do you know what I mean? Who do they think they are? Emotion would just probably come out as aggression, But in a way, having that bit of fire in me belly held us in good stead, in terms of bringing me son up, because I wanted to make sure that no one would ever make him feel that way. And that's how I set about bringing him up.
When I was a dad, I was 15 when I found out, and I was 16 when I had her. And that was the scariest experience ever. But luckily I had friends there like Will to help us at least get through it a bit, but I had no experienced help, so it's me mom and dad, that's pretty much all I had to go off to try and be the best parent I could. But in working experience, I had no social workers or anything like that to help me because I didn't know they were around.
I didn't know what services were out there. And there was no father and toddler group or anything like that around where I was.
Well, the main one I've been involved with was just young dads.
There was a lot of support. So I was brought up in Battle Hill, you know what I mean? And then I got given keys to a flat in Howden. So at the local community centre, there was mother and toddler groups. So when I started volunteering there, And like I started getting empowered by some of the workers and by doing my youth work course. And then once I started, like, I had a couple of good role models around us, you know what I mean? Like, I started like to contest, like, why isn't there a father and toddler group if there's a mother and toddler group? I started to like sort of find my voice, and the answer I would get back a lot of the time was that women have been oppressed for like thousands of years by men. And I'm like, yeah, that might be the case, right? But like, if what you're doing is concentrating on the mother in the household and developing her and the baby, but you're leaving the dad in the underfall, you're going to end up splitting up a lot of families. Like, surely the young dad needs as much support as the young mum. And like, I fought tooth and nail for those kind of things. So that's how I ended up really enjoying working with like young dads and young men. I'm a granddad now, you know, I'm 43-year-old. I'm a granddad. My daughter's had a kid. Got a 4-year-old grandson. It's absolutely mint. It's the best thing in the world that's ever happened to us. And I'm young enough and old enough to really flip and enjoy the experience of being a grandparent. But like, he's 4 and he's just like a sponge, and I love that age. I think what happened was, right, so like when I was like a teenager, we had like the riots in the Meadowell, then there was like riots in like Howden and in the West End and stuff, so there was a lot of money pumped into the area. So there was quite a lot of support going on. There was like business support, you know, if you were like an entrepreneur, and I always just wanted to make money. And obviously it was easier to make it illegally, or the only people that I saw around us were making it illegally in my teenage years. But then as I started doing my youth work, volunteering and training and stuff, I just tried to access as much as I could, you know. But like from going and sort of volunteering and helping out, I ended up working all over the Northeast. And then I went down to Southeast London. I worked with inner city gangs. And then I ended up out in Jamaica on a homeless project in the ghetto, working out in Jamaica. And then I met the head of Bradford Youth Service when I was out there. Got invited to Bradford just after the race riots in Bradford. I ended up going to Bradford and turning a youth centre into a community centre, and like developed like parent and toddler groups and father and toddler groups and all of that kind of stuff there. I work with kids from Israel, Palestine. I work with kids from Chernobyl. I work with kids from like, all over Europe, and I just like absolutely loved engaging with people. And eventually I was asked to go and help a film production company. They were wanting to do something around teenage parents, right? And they says to us, like, we're finding it really difficult to get in there and like engage with these parents. And I was like, oh mate, this is my bag. I can help you do this. So I ended up making a film about like an interactive resource about teenage parents, and it won a BAFTA. And then another production company asked us to go and work in Sunderland with them and do something around knife crime. And like all of a sudden I seen like how they were using film to engage with young people, or like make a film really. But in my head, I'm thinking like, wow, I could like some of the stories, like, you know, like some of my stories and some of your stories and all of our stories. I thought, like, wow, like if these people are coming in and they're not from where we're from, very wealthy people coming in, trying to make a story and putting their little slant on it, but it's not quite right. I thought, can you imagine if people could get access to the real story? You know what I mean? Like, where it's really.
Yeah.
So like that's what, like, so I was bang into it. And like, because I've always been like mad keen with business, or like having a look at opportunities, I just want to try and better myself all the time. I ended up working on this other film with a production company about knife crime, and that won a Royal Television Society Award. And then all of a sudden I was asked by the BBC to go and help organise events. So I was organising events, right, where young people could go and try like filmmaking or radio production or stop frame animation with the guys from Wallace and Gromit and that. I was getting paid proper good money. It was the best money I'd ever made. But the work wasn't reliable, so I'd get paid for like 4 months and it'd be like just shy of $1,000 a week. Do you know what I mean? Like, but then not work for 6 months, so you could never spend it. You know what I mean? Because like you didn't know when, and then you would work for 2 weeks, and then you'd be off, and then you would work for like 3 months and that. But what I've done with that is I made sure that like as many youth centres and community centres that I'd worked with in the past all got opportunities to come and like try these classes and stuff. And it was absolutely brilliant, man. I had like the West End of Newcastle was the first one, and I had like groups from all over the place coming. and made like a film in 3 days. And I made sure that there were some pretty hardcore kids in there from all the dodgy community centres I'd worked in, and they weren't really like the type of people that the BBC wanted in there, but I wasn't really bothered, you know, I was class. And then I ended up working at Bernardo's with young dads, and my son was 17, right, when I got this job. And he was the same age as I was when I was a dad. And it felt like I'd come full circle. Do you know what I mean? It was just lush. Like, just going off my personal experience, because like no one had told us like a lot of things, and I just had to try and like just make it up myself. So there was like practical things that I'd done. Like I spent a lot of time reading and teaching my son to read and write, and I started teaching him French, right? But his French had surpassed mine by the time he was 5. And he's asking me questions like I know everything because I'm his dad, and I'm like, I've got no idea, mate. I'm gonna have to go and find this out. And like, so it made us wish that I'd like stuck in at school, you know what I mean, instead of dicking around. Like practical things as well, though. When Shane was born, I remember Kerry looking at this baby and just like doting and like instantly falling in love with this baby. And I would never have hurt him, but I didn't love him, right? And this sounds kind of mad, right? But it's the God's honest truth. And it wasn't until I was like, I took him for a walk, maybe he's by himself, right? So he's in the buggy, and he might be like, say, 4-month-old, 5-month-old, 6-month-old, right? It's probably not 6, but it's probably like 4 or 5 months. And I remember him smiling at us, and I fell in love with him then. And I realized that I hadn't loved him up until then. Like, I hadn't actually loved him, right? And then I thought, but I never said anything because I felt dead guilty. And I thought, like, wow, like, you know, like you should love your kids. And why am I, like, he's there and I provide for him. And then I started thinking, like, I wonder if all men go through this. I wonder if it's just me. So when my daughter came along, in my mind, I'd never told anyone this. In my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder if the same thing's going to happen. And it did. Exactly the same thing happened again. And it took until about 4-month-old, like, and I remember having a little girl the second time and being like, whoa, like major panic and all of that. What am I going to do? I've now got a little girl, and it was life-changing. But like, even with Natalie, I remember Natalie being born, and Natalie wasn't breathing, and they took her away, and I had her dangling upside down, and the midwife's trying to cover her, or the nurse or whoever's trying to cover her, and I'm at the side, I want to see what's going on. And I seen her smacking, come on, you lazy girl, come on, you lazy girl, come on. And she looked like 18. And when 18's dying at the side of a river and is grey. And I saw her slap her butt, right? And I swear to God, lads, right? I saw her, and I saw the pink go from her head to her toe, and I saw her come to life. And I didn't realise, it was happening that fast that I didn't realise that she was dead until that point, or she just wasn't there. And then she was. And then obviously the most beautiful thing in the world was watching my kids being born. It was like, it was better than any drug, better than anything you could ever take. That experience of seeing your kids being born was just the most overwhelming and amazing thing. And then with her, I saw life breathe into her. With both of them, I wanted to protect them. I wanted to bring them up. I had exactly the same experience with Natty, that I didn't actually bond with her until she was about 4 months. And like, when I went to work with Bernardo's, I took my son, who was 17 at the time, and I was like, say that little baby you've got there, lads. I was like, he's going to end up, or she's going to end up like this big lump here. My son, who's 17, and it was beautiful having Shane there, because Shane was also around young lads. And then he got to realise, wow, my dad was like this young when he had me, and he was doing really well. Like, you know, he was doing well in his A levels, and in fact, he was like probably in the top 2%, 1% of his year. Wow. And like, so I knew like all of that time and that investment and all of them people looking down on us, you know, I was like, yeah, man, check him out. He was the first person in the family to go to university, and he smashed it. And me and him have got an amazing relationship. I mean, my daughter have got an amazing relationship. But anyway, I was standing with this group of young lads, and I was like, I didn't love him, you know, properly until he was about 4 months old. And I swear to God, out of a group of about 12 young dads, I reckon about 11 were like, oh my God, Paul, like, I feel like that sometimes. Like, the mother seems to love the Ben, and I thought, like, wow, just that one conversation, just that one thing, like, it's all right to be a dad, and it's all right to have a completely different experience than what a mother has. And of course, a mother's going to bond easier because she's just growing a baby for 9 months and then going through the trauma of delivering birth, and like it will take a bit of time. And like even when their mom split up, it wasn't easy. Like there's just like, it's easy to sugarcoat, but it wasn't easy. But we did actually do pretty well in allowing the kids to come and go as they please, and the kids were always brought up just being able to bounce through the two. So if she was doing their heading, they could come over here. They would never escape getting wrong, like we're a brick wall like that, and if the kids were wrong, they were wrong, but we've done a good job of bringing them up, you know what I mean? I loved taking Shane there. I felt like I'd sort of completed my career in community work by doing that, you know what I mean?
The story that obviously you told, that I can relate to a lot of that sort of stuff when obviously it comes to growing up in bad areas and splitting up with partners, and even when it came to obviously the Ben not being alive, because obviously we've had the miscarriage and stuff like that, and it is terrifying just the thought of it. You have obviously raised your Ben's right. I mean, he's, like you said, he's been university first one, he aced it. So do you feel like you taught him from your life experiences, if you know what I mean? Like obviously as you were raising him, you raised him opposite to your life experience, so you didn't want him to have the same upbringing as you, sort of thing.
I reckon, I love to take credit for him, but at the end of the day, his own determination and stuff has got him where it is. He was brought up with a certain mentality, but it was coupled with him being polite and being respectful, and he loved school. But obviously, there was still a bit of that get-go in him. You know what I mean? My parents and her parents were brilliant grandparents as well, in all fairness, you know what I mean? And I was lucky enough when I was a kid that my nana and grandad, grandma and grandad were just the best grandparents you could ever flip and imagine. When my daughter fell pregnant, so my daughter was working with me and she was being sick all the time. So I've worked in sexual health and stuff, right? And I know when everyone else's kids are pregnant, but I don't know when my own are, right? She turned 18. We took her, she wanted to go to Amsterdam for her birthday on her 18th. I took her to Amsterdam. She sat in the hotel being sick all the time. So anyway, I started so she got a pregnancy test in the early stages and it came back negative. So we'll go to these meetings. I'm taking her down to Leeds to go to a meeting. I'm taking her to London to go to a meeting, and she's being sick. And I'm like, whoa, I started getting really worried, thinking this might be something really serious. Me and Wallace were coming back. We're coming back from Derby, and we got on the train, and my daughter phoned us up crying. She'd been to the doctors with my sister. So it's a kind of hike, from Derby. You've got a zigzag across the country to get back in. It's a couple of trains, it's a good 6 hours or 5 hours or whatever, right? So she's crying. I'm like, it's all right, Don, it's all right, it's all right. Just tell us what's up. And I was thinking it's cancer or something. And she was like, I was like, are you okay? And she was like, no, man, I'm pregnant. And I was like, whew. I was like, it was more relief for me, to be honest, right? So I'm like, well, Don, don't worry, you've got we'll talk about it. You've got some options, and don't you worry about that. We'll talk about that when I get back in. And then she was like, no, man, Dad, man, you didn't understand. I'm having a Ben in 9 weeks. I was like, whoa. Mate, she's absolutely tiny. She's tiny. And she's like a size 0. And she had no belly on her whatsoever. And we had 9 weeks, 10 weeks to buy a cot. And I was like, well, mate, you're definitely pregnant. You're definitely having a baby. And there was me and Wallace on the train, and I just sort of sat there, and she was like, Harry, are you Harry? And I was like, pour a glass of wine. And I was like, yeah, man, you're going to be in Nana. And that was an experience. And I'll tell you what is mint now is being in my early 40s, and my kids have all got their own homes. I've got 2 25-year-olds and a 22-year-old, all got their own careers. And a lot of my mates now are just starting to have kids. I don't know if I would have the energy now to go through all of that again. Do you know what I mean? When Oscar wipes me out, he has me life. And I guess so the trade-offs in the early days were my mates were out partying, going to Ibiza. My mates were at university studying, and I was at home and changing nappies. But now I'm marching on and trying to do my own thing, and I know my kids are alright. You know what I mean?
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Make sure to check our DigiDAD page at www.digidad.uk, where you can see, hear, interact and chat with loads of other young dads and get all the dad-friendly content you need. See you there. This podcast was produced by North East Young Dads and Lads and was made possible by funding from Esmee Fairbairn and the Lloyds Bank Foundation.